Hi everyone, hope you're all doing okay. Here I am, breaking the rules yet again. I'm running FT8 on 40 meters this afternoon. Something I haven't done actually for quite a long time. I haven't run FT8 for quite a long time. Part of the reason for that is because my Icom 7300, which I don't have anymore because I part exchanged it for the Kenwood, was kind of dedicated to FT8, and I needed a patch cable from the Yaesu FT991A, which I spoke to Chris at Moonraker about. Those guys are so incredibly helpful, and Adrian offered to make me one, but the parts are so slow now with the sort of global supply chain problem. In the end, he gave me some information about another supplier, and I ordered one and it literally came the next day. So the patch cable, it's a DIN connector, DIN type connector on the back of the Yaesu into a sort of standard connector for the PTT on the back of the BLA 350, and works perfectly and worked first time. So as you can see right now, I'm putting out just over 200 watts for 6 watts in on 40 meters, and my MFJ 941E is registering exactly the same forward power. Now that my MFJ's got a bit of a battering over the last few days because of my now already infamous, the uncomfortable truth about how ham radio equipment manufacturers specify their products. Sorry about that, but here we have the FT991A being driving the BLA 350 through my MFJ 941E. And what's interesting actually, as the amp warms up, the output power drops a little bit, but it's still saying about 220, and you probably can't see that, but the MFJ is saying about, well, almost exactly the same. So, and the MFJ, I have to be fair, has been behaving itself perfectly for the last couple of hours whilst I've been running FT8 at sort of 200 watts plus. Now, just starting again. So the reason for this video, and the reason I sort of said I'm breaking the rules again, is because people get a bit sniffy about FT8. Firstly, as some of the old timers particularly don't like it. They think that it kind of de-skills the hobby, and we should all be learning Morse code, which I only sort of partly agree with. I've said many times before that FT8, a lot of the skill of course is in actually setting up the computer to talk to the radio, routing the audio into the right place. I use virtual audio cables to do that, and you have to download codecs, etc., USB codecs. So you can see actually the BLA, actually just stopping myself for a second, is now at 45 degrees, and the power's dropped down to about 200 watts, but everything's otherwise perfect. But FT8 is useful if you've got a foundation license, so you're limited on power. And that's what I found. So some hams are sniffy about FT8 in general. Others are sniffy if you start using lots of power. There's this kind of belief that FT8 is a sort of low power mode only, and it's not. It's a mode that you can use when conditions of propagation are not very good. So it's you know, it's a low signal to noise kind of mode. When you've got relatively low signal to noise, FT8 still works. Sorry, when you run FT8 with this sort of power, you're literally making QSOs every like minute or so. So from my point of view, I like FT8, and I've not been scared to use higher powers. I've never actually, this is the first time I've ever tried FT8 using a linear. So the maximum I've ever used really on FT8 is about 100 watts, but here I am using about 200. And as I said, the output power kind of increases and decreases as the rig, as the linear warms up a bit. So now I'm putting 8 watts in, I'm getting 200 out. When it's cold, or not cold, but just warm, you get about the same amount of power for sort of 6. So at the end of the day, I know people that run 400 watts with FT8. In fact, I'm sure there are hams out there that run a kilowatt on FT8, and you need to. In fact, a friend of mine, Nigel G0CQZ, he bought a BLA 350 Plus a couple of weeks ago for that very purpose, to run FT8 using sort of 300 plus watts, because he wants to make contacts out into the Pacific. And this is a guy that's made, I think it's 10 or 11,000 QSOs on FT8, so it's his thing. So he wanted to use more power, and he was kind of partly the inspiration for me to try it with basically double the power that I've ever tried before. Now, as we've been arguing about via my previous video, we all know that if you double the TX power, the signal strength is you're talking about half an S point, but sometimes even on sideband half an S point matters, and on this kind of digital mode, it can matter quite a lot. So so there you go. So yeah, running FT8 about 200 watts on 40 meters. The band isn't in great shape, but when you do run FT8 with lots of power, it kind of doesn't really matter. You're kind of making contacts all the time, and that's some recent contacts in the last few minutes. That's me having a shower. That's me going back to 40 meters. I did have a look at 20, but you can see lots and lots of activity on FT8 on 40 meters for the last sort of couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours. So so there you go. Again, making another contact already. And if I go to PSK Reporter and just update a little bit for 40, 487 reception reports in the last sort of 3 hours or so. So so there you go. It probably wouldn't look very dissimilar if I was running 100 watts, but that's not the point. At the end of the day, even if people don't like it, or they do get a bit sniffy about running digital modes at sort of high power, particularly FT8, what can I say? I don't care. It's do whatever you need to do to enjoy the hobby. So so there you go. And I suppose, should I make another comment on the now infamous video regarding the audio clipping when I used the MFJ with my Kenwood TS990? Maybe it's funny actually. That video has had, I think it's getting on now for like 11,000 views in like 4 days, and it would normally take about a year for excuse me, a video on my channel to get that to reach those kind of views. But obviously people are finding it interesting. By far the majority of the people who watch that video get it. The point is that somewhere in that system something's wrong. Either the TS990 is putting out much more than 200 watts or more than 200, the TS480HX is putting out less than 200, and the MFJ ATU isn't operating to its full stated specification. So that's the point really, and then these so-called experienced hams are telling me that I've got an earth loop and my grounding system's not adequate and all this kind of stuff, and it's all just voodoo engineering. They've got nothing more empirical on this than I have, and I know that there's nothing wrong with my earth. I know I don't have ground loops, etc., etc. They just come out with this stuff, and anyway, so and actually there's been a few, there's been sort of 2 or 3 messages from obviously trolls. Trolls are just so obvious because they have YouTube channels with no subscribers, no content, no nothing, and I just read them and laugh and then just basically block them from the site. So they're kind of wasting their time. But yeah, the bottom line is it's quite obvious that one of those pieces of equipment is not working to specification. And I'm not saying it's the MFJ. It could be the 480 is not putting out enough power. But yeah, it's been interesting. There's a lot of people out there in this hobby that think they know way more than they really do. There's only, I think, a small minority who are actually very, very knowledgeable in terms of the equipment and RF and etc., etc. So it's been quite interesting. And I'm aware that the video is, is sort of slightly inflammatory, but at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't bother me, because at the end of the day, the channel is there to be watched, and if people watch that video and they don't like it, so what? You know, every time someone writes a comment, positive or negative, it's always positive for the channel. Every time someone watches the video, it's always positive for the channel, and must be doing something right, because typically a popular video of mine would have 500 or 600 views after a couple of days, and this one's had like nearly 11,000. So one way or another, for whatever reason, when I published that video, I definitely was doing the right thing, and there'll be more on that coming shortly on the same subject. But just reminded me that, you know, I know that there are guys out there that that would be like, well, why are you using 200 watts on FT8? Because it works, you know, when you use 5 watts, it works on QRP. Yeah, well, I know. So what? You know, and it's just, you know, my opinion versus someone else's. So there you go. BLA 350, great amplifier. I mean, some of you guys know I only paid 160 quid for it, the cost to replace the power transistors on the output stage, and it's literally worked perfectly. If you've got high SWR, it complains and shuts itself down to protect itself. Can't go wrong. It's a brilliant piece of kit. So glad I bought it, and yeah, just worked first time with the cable from the FT991A. Literally had nothing to do except plug it in and start going. So all very good. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Please feel free to comment, and I wish you all good DX and a good weekend. Thanks for watching. 73.